New Year, New Me. Anybody else post that on Facebook last night? No? Or this morning? No? Anybody remember that trend? Like every year, people would go on Facebook and post New Year, New Me, and they talk about what they're going to change in their lives, the goals, the resolutions they would make for that year. Everybody know what I'm talking about? And so, maybe you didn't post New Year, New Me on Facebook, but maybe you already came up with some resolutions or some goals. Maybe you came up with something for the 2023 that you're going to do. Maybe it's losing weight. Maybe it's earning a higher salary. Maybe it's falling in love and getting back out there. Maybe it is something very personal to you. Whatever it is, we see people set resolutions every year. Every year. I set one. I try to set some. Did you guys know? I'm sure you've heard this. By February, 80% of people have given up on their resolutions. That's only 31 days in. 31 days. So if you're part of that 20% of people that made it past February last year, congratulations. You did better than me by a lot. Good job. Good job. Because that's never been me. So you deserve some applause. But I do set goals for myself in nearly every aspect of my life, right? I've had the this year I'm going to eat clean and I'm going to work out every day resolution. Anybody else ever had that? I've had the I'm going to hit the gym at 4 a.m. every morning. Anybody else ever had that? Yeah, you can ask my family, my wife. I never hit that. I don't get up at 4 a.m. unless it's for a screaming baby. And even then, maybe you are I'm going to get my life more organized. I'm going to get myself together this year. My house is going to look like one of those people on YouTube that get their house 100% beautiful. If you're like me or you have small kids, that might last for 10 minutes. And then it's back to being Toyland. But maybe that's you. Maybe that's what you've got. Ultimately, when I make goals at January 1, I fall short of them. I set big goals, way too big goals, for me to just make on my own. And sometimes I even fall short of those before February hits. But all these resolutions, all these goals, all these failures had something in common. I was leaning on my own strength and not on God's. I was trusting my own natural ability. Anybody else do this where they trust on their natural ability rather than God's supernatural ability? Because I do that all the time. The natural ability of me, the naturalist things that I can pull off on my own, or at least I think I can. The supernatural are things that only God can do through me. And often, I fall back onto this natural ability rather than leaning onto Him and His supernatural ability. Is that you as well? Do you look at your life and you see sometimes battles, frustrations, failures? When you think about your goals, do you see those more often than you see breakthroughs in your life? What can we do? Right? That's what we're talking about today. What can we do to fix this? What can we do to get ourselves on a path where we set goals and make them? And where can we go to find the right goals? Right? Because sometimes I set goals that really don't match where I need to be going. Sometimes I think I need to be going this direction. That's not it. That's not where I should be going. And so I've set the wrong goal. What can we do? Where can we go for this? We're going to look at Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. It says this: Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. Whew. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Trust with all of it. Not a little bit of it. Not a little bit of it. All of it. Give everything. Give everything. I'm extremely guilty of not doing this. Extremely guilty. There are so many times I compartmentalize my life. I have a work life. I have a church life. I have a family life. I have just a me life. I compartmentalize things. I make sure that I give my Sundays and I give my church outreach time to him. I might give some family time a little bit out throughout the week. I might give a few phone calls or text messages here and there to him. But in the mundane and in the things that I've done a million times, I tend to think I've got this. I've taught for 4 years now. I've been a teacher for 4 years, or at least this is my 4th year teaching. I don't walk in every day going, God, what are we doing today? I'm going to lean on you today. I walk in going, I've done this over and over. I made the lesson plans. I know where I'm going with this and that. I got this. God, you can take a back seat, right? Let the teacher at work here. I got this. That happens so often. The mundane things, the things I do all the time, the millions of times that I've done them, I don't trust God in those things. I trust me. I trust me. You guys the same? Is that you as well? Maybe it is. And I would say, I would hope that there were a few more than just me out there, right? That are going through the same thought process. So where do you need to see breakthrough in your life this year? Where do you need to see a victory in your life this year? And where do you need to give things over to Jesus this year? So some of us have things in our life that are battles. And we've been battling them for so long. There are things that aren't in our control. These battles are things that we can't just control ourselves necessarily. So when I think of battles, when we talk about battles today, we're talking about things like praying for somebody else to come to know Jesus. We're talking about things like a friend, a child, a family member, a mother, a father. Things that are outside of your control. You can't specifically go and say, all right, I'm bringing you to Jesus. Here you go, Jesus, and it's done. Can't do that. I wish you could sometimes, but we can't do that. We can't physically carry them the rest of the way. It's things outside of our control. But that doesn't mean there can't be breakthrough in battles in your life just because it's outside of your control. Biblically, I think of Abraham and I think of Sarah. I think about how they waited and struggled so long to have a child of their own. Man, what a battle that must have been. To wait, to trust, to not give up, even though they waited so long. Can you imagine? Sarah was 99. I don't know very many 99-year-olds. They waited so long to have a child of their own. And they never gave up. And even when hope seemed lost, God blessed them with a child. God gave them a breakthrough in this moment. And then one of my favorite things is that in Hebrews chapter 11, and if you don't know about Hebrews chapter 11, it's kind of like the Hall of Fame of faith. Like if there was to be like a physical Hall of Fame, this is what you'd see. The biblical people in this passage, in this chapter. And Sarah made the list. And so in Hebrews chapter 11, starting with verse 11, it says, by faith, Sarah herself received power to conceive. Notice that first part, by what? Faith. By faith, Sarah herself received power to conceive. And even when she was past the age, since she considered him faithful who had promised. Therefore, from one man, and him as good as dead, were born descendants as many as the stars of heaven, and as many as the innumerable grains of sand by the seashore. By faith and trust, Sarah had a breakthrough. By faith and by trust, Abraham became the father of many nations, and his descendants were like the stars of the sky and the grains of the sand. By faith and trust, they had a breakthrough. So by faith and trust, Jesus can change your battle into a breakthrough. So I want you to take a moment. What are some battles that you've had? Maybe it's just been this past year. Maybe it's been your whole life. Maybe it's been most of your life. Maybe it's been everything to you. What's a battle that you've had that you need to see a breakthrough this year? What's a battle that you've had you need to see a breakthrough? Take a moment. Think on that. What's a battle you've had? Some of us are frustrated with things in our lives. Do we ever get frustrated by things? I get frustrated more and more as I get older, I feel like. Like 10 years ago, Evan was super chill, never got frustrated at anything. I think it's now like Dad Evan has, stepped into this little bit of frustrating moments type stuff. But maybe there are new frustrations or lingering ones, right? Maybe you've got something new that's just come out this past couple of months or this year. Maybe it's a frustration you've had your whole life. And when we talk about frustrations today, we're talking about things that are internal, things that are inside of you, things that come from within us. Maybe it's forgetfulness. I love my dad. I love him. Pastor raised me to be the man I am today. And my dad is 68. And the more and more that I watch my dad grow older, the past year or two, he's had a lot of health problems with mainly like his brain. And I watch as he will call me 3 times a day to tell me the same news. Maybe your frustration is forgetfulness. Maybe it's an unwillingness to do something. Whatever it is. Like a Jonah situation. I refuse, God, to go do that. I refuse to do it. Maybe it's an unwillingness to do something. Whatever it is, it's something that comes from within us. I think of how I'm frustrated in my own inability to trust him in everything that I do in all situations. I'm frustrated in my ability to make room, as we're getting ready to learn about the next series, to make room for him in all things. To make room for him in my job. To make room for him in all of my family life. To make room for him in every moment of my day. I'm frustrated in that. That's an internal battle. That's an internal frustration I have. And when I think of frustration in the Bible outside of Jonah, I think of Peter. Peter, I grew up, and like I said, my dad was a pastor. I grew up in Sunday school. I was at church every time the doors were open. Wednesday nights, Sunday mornings. Anytime my dad had to go do something and my mom was like, hey, I got to get Evan out of the house, that's where I was at the church. And I grew up idolizing Peter in a lot of ways. I think it was mainly because the sword and the ear thing, that was cool to me. But I idolized Peter. And as an adult now, I look at Peter and I go, Peter, what did you do? What are we doing? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, Peter, as Jesus is arrested, we're making our way towards the cross, Peter, just as Jesus had foretold, denied his knowing of Jesus 3 times. Peter, the guy who literally walked alongside Jesus, walked alongside of him for his whole ministry. is the most mentioned, it feels like, disciple of Jesus. But yet, he denies him because he's scared. He denies him because he fears for his life. Peter. And so, God still puts Peter, despite his untrustworthiness, despite his doubting, despite his fear, he still puts him on such a high pedestal in the church. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it comes from Matthew 16, 13 through 18. He puts him as the foundation of the church because he confesses that Jesus is the Christ. It says, now when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, who do people say that the Son of Man is? And they said, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. He said to them, but who do you say that I am? Who do you say that I am? Here comes good old Simon Peter, right? He says, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus answered him, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter. And on this rock, I will build my church. Peter, on you. I'm going to make you the foundation of it. We're going to grow from you. The church is about me, but you're the foundation, Peter. Despite your fear, despite the things that I know you're going to do wrong, Peter, we're going to lay this foundation. So imagine the frustration that Peter has when he doubts Jesus. Because when Jesus foretold that Peter was going to deny him 3 times, he specifically said, you're going to deny me 3 times before the rooster crows. And then when the rooster crowed after Peter denies him, Peter realizes, he was right, I did that. He was right. But here's the deal, it didn't end there. Peter didn't just, have that moment and move on, and it was not spoken about again. Later on, when Jesus and Peter come face to face, Jesus says, do you love me? Peter says, of course I love you. And then Jesus says, do you love me? And Peter says, yes, Master, of course I love you. And then a third time, Jesus says, do you love me? And Peter, in this moment, for the third time, just as he denied 3 times, for the third time looks right at Jesus. He's got nothing left. And says, yes, Master, I love you. Despite his frustrations and his fear, Jesus still brings breakthrough. So if you're like, man, I've denied, I've doubted, I've run the other way, I've never stepped in a church, I have only stepped in a church for habitual reasons, I don't even know what I really believe, that doesn't mean that you're far off from Jesus. That doesn't mean he doesn't still pursue you. That doesn't mean he doesn't still love you. And that doesn't mean that he can't still bring breakthrough. There is no time that your doubt has ever pushed you too far away from Jesus. And the beautiful part is, your doubt is not near as big as he is. So, by faith and trust, Jesus can change, as he did Peter's frustrations to breakthrough, he can change our frustrations, our internal struggles, the things that keep us from doing what he has for us. He can change that into breakthrough. Failure is the last one we're going to talk about today. That's not a word we like to talk about as a society. As a teacher, I'm not even allowed to fail kids, right? We don't fail kids anymore. You might have grown up in the era where you could fail. You could get an F on your report card, whatever that might look like. We can't do that. We don't use the word failure at all, right? I don't say anything about failure. And I don't necessarily disagree with that in some aspects because of the connotations we've put on the word failure. But for today's purposes, we're going to use that word. And it sounds like a harsh word. Failure. Because failure can seem so final. When you fail at something, it can feel like the end. A lot of us think, if I failed a test, I failed out of college, I failed at this job, I failed at getting this done, right? We think of failure as a finality in our life. But here's the deal, if God is still in it, then the work's not done. If God's still moving, it's not over. So when I think of failures, I think about those best laid plans. And for today's purposes, this is how we're going to talk about it. Those best laid plans, those resolutions, right? Where I put all my hopes, we put all of our hope into. We put all of our thought, our effort into, at least mentally. So for me, that might be, I think about the workout clothes that I bought last January 1 that are, now loungewear that I wear around the house. I think about the gym bag that I bought from Planet Fitness that sits in my closet with some of those workout clothes and things like that in it, but never really leaves the closet, right? You with me? I think about the unused gym memberships. I think about those resistance bands that I asked for Christmas last year in 2021, and they're still in the box in 2023. They're just, keeping a nice little spot in the closet with the gym bag and the workout clothes. I think of those ideas and those resolutions that never quite got liftoff from the ground. I think of those conversations that I've needed to have. We've all got them. Like, I'm not, my wife will tell you, I'll tell you, anybody who knows me will tell you, I'm not confrontational. If somebody comes to me or if I've got a conversation I need to have, I will think through it. If I know it might turn into an argument, I will rehearse it in the shower for days. And I win every time. I will worry about that. I'm not a confrontational person. So when there's a conversation that I need to have, I often do whatever I can to not have that conversation. I fail at having that. I think of those actions that I have to take, but I haven't because I'm scared of what the change will look like afterwards. I think about those failures of mine, those conversations, those actions, those thoughts, those plans. That's what I think of. Like I said, I'm still breathing. And God is still working. So if you're still breathing, God is still working. So those plans, those conversations, those ideas, those things that you want to put into motion aren't done. Those things, those failures aren't final. So one of these things for me, one of these failures, one of these things that I've had in my life in the past couple of years, I've said it multiple times in this message alone, I'm a dad. I've got a 6-year-old, I've got a 9-month-old, and I'm a worship leader, I'm a teacher. My life gets busy. It's really busy, right? And I feel like some days are like I don't see my house from in the sunlight, right? I don't see my kids but for 20 minutes in the morning and maybe for a few minutes at night. I have those days. And so with that comes the fact that it's been hard in my parenthood and in my husbandhood to find time to pray together, to grow together, to worship together, to talk about what's going on in our spiritual lives as a family. And I get to hear all the beautiful things that those kids right above us right now are learning. I get to hear about how Luke, in the book of Luke, Jesus fed the 5,000. I get to hear that from my daughter, and it's one of those moments I love when she tells me what she hears. But yet I, for the past couple years, haven't had the time to be that teacher to my kids, to be that model to my kids and to my wife of what it looks like to pray and worship and grow inside the household. Because my life has been so busy, or at least that's the excuse I'm going to give it, right? And despite how many thoughts that I have, if I need to get this going, I need to make sure that I can be this in my family's life, I kind of have kept it to myself. I've kept it inside for so long. So when I think about implementing, a little Bible study with my wife or getting a devotional for my daughter, I always put it off. Not because I thought Hannah would say no or that she'd get upset about it. Not because I thought my kids would think it's lame. Just because there are times where I go, but I don't have time for this, and it's not a big enough part of my life right now. I've got to focus on the other things that keep the lights on, right? I got to focus on the things that I've got to get done more than this. I just didn't see it as a big enough thing to talk about. About a week or two ago, the weight of needing a breakthrough in our stressful, busy lives hit me like a ton of bricks. And there are days where I don't feel like I can breathe because my schedule is filled to the brim. Anybody else have those days and those moments? And in that weight, in that moment, I realized I've got to slow down and grow with my family in who He calls us to be. I've got to be there to be the model for my kids and who they need to be through Him. And so the past couple of nights, we sat down, me and Hannah did, and we've got our own thing we're going through, and on top of that, Harper's got a really cute book that's a devotional. It's called Roaring Like a Lion. It's based on that Daniel Bashta song, right? And we've sat down with her and we've read through it, and the things that she says, the things that she knows already, I feel like I'm having a conversation with a mini theologian. I'm going, man, the things that you're saying are great. And then on top of that, after she goes to bed, we sit down and we read through our own, me and Hannah, our own little, it's just a devotional on the YouVersion app. And we read through and we talk about what is going on. And from that, more conversations have spilled out about our spiritual lives, about where God's got us going as a family, where God's got us going individually, the things that we feel like have gone great, the things that we feel like we still have struggles with, whether it be together or individually. And so from that one moment of breakthrough have sprung a lot of small breakthroughs. And I don't know about you, but when breakthrough happens after breakthrough after breakthrough after breakthrough, it makes you want more breakthrough. It makes you want more. And so, by faith and trust, I know personally, just from the past 2 to 3 days, that Jesus can change your failures into breakthroughs. So what are some failures that you have? What are some frustrations that you have that you need to see a breakthrough in this year? Take a moment. Think about it. What are some things internally? What are some things we haven't gotten lift off on? What are some things that haven't left the ground? You need a breakthrough. You need a victory in this year. Take a moment. Because as long as Jesus is in it, the story's not finished. As long as Jesus is in it and He's at work, breakthrough and victory are coming. As long as He's moving, breakthrough is coming. I say this nearly every week, and I try to think of something fresh every week as a worship leader, like, what can I say here? What can I say there? And I don't always do that, right? Like sometimes it's almost in my brain if this is what we say. But we don't serve a dormant God. And what I mean by that is we don't serve a God who is there out of obligation. We don't serve a God who's not there. We don't serve a God who only loves those who sing the loudest in the room. And thank God for that. We don't serve a God who only loves those that pray the most. And thank God for that. We don't serve a God who only loves those that give the most money. Thank God for that. He wants to love you. And not just wants to, he does love you. He does love you. He wants to have a relationship, right? He doesn't just want this to be one-sided. He is jealous for you. He's jealous. The things that capture your heart, the things that capture your attention, your emotions, he's jealous for those things. He's jealous for you despite those things, right? In spite of those things. He's jealous for you. He wants to give you peace. He wants you to go from death to life, from your life to go from destruction to glory, from failure to breakthrough. He wants nothing more than to love you and be in a relationship with you and walk side by side with you through the greats and the terribles. He wants nothing more than that. So nothing you've done and no one you've been can change his love for you. His sovereignty, his love, his mercy, his grace, none of that is dependent on you. Man, thank God that his love for me doesn't change based on my love for him. Because if it did, I would have nothing left. So don't think I've made too many mistakes for Jesus to move in my life. He's already moving. Don't think I've abused my relationship with him too many times, or I've doubted him, or even his existence in order for him to love me. I'm too far. I've done it too many times. You're already loved. God loves you just as you are. And he wants to change your battles, your frustrations, your externals, your internals, your haven't happened yet. He wants to change those to victory. He wants to see you, and he wants to move with you from the things that are holding you down to breakthrough, to victory. So for me, my prayer for breakthrough in my life is the time. The one that I'm praying for is the time to be with my family. It's to sit down and to pray together, worship together. Most weeks I have two guitars. I let me take one home most weeks. I come here to do all that. And I was like, why? I want to take time to worship together with my family. That's what I'm praying for this year. And when it comes to this church, and when I think about a breakthrough that I want to see in this church this year, is I want to see a community that loves on each other. A community that encourages one another, a community that's not just about like hanging out on Sundays, but a community that wants to grow and to build each other up, and is involved in each other's lives, and is working together to see the kingdom here on earth, is doing things to help the least of these, doing things to grow the kingdom, doing things to build up one another. That's the breakthrough I'm praying for this year in our church. So, on your chair, and if not on your chair, I think every chair got some, but if not, there's plenty of open chairs. On your chair, you should have 2 note cards, and we're going to pass out some pens real quick. So one note card is for you, and the other, we're going to lay down at the foot of this cross. So one note card is for you, and the other we're going to lay down at the foot of this cross. And today, we're going to write the breakthroughs that we want to see and the breakthroughs that we need in 2023. One should be personal. One should be something that you want to see in your own life. Maybe it's your job. Maybe it's your family. Maybe it's your friends. It's something personal. It's a battle. It's a frustration. It's a failure you've seen in your own life. Where in your life do you need to see Jesus move and breakthrough to happen? The other breakthrough I want you to write on these note cards is for our church. It's for Sanctuary. Where do you want to see God move and breakthrough to happen through this church or in this church? And as somebody on staff here, I want you to be as blunt as you can on both of them. So the first note card, you're going to write the same thing on both note cards. So it's going to be an identical copy. The first note card you're going to keep as a reminder of where you want God to move in your life and in our church. Pray over it. Put it somewhere you're going to see every day. Put it on your bathroom mirror. Put it on your bedside table. Put it on top of your dresser. Put it somewhere you're going to see it every single day. And don't stop believing. Don't stop praying for that breakthrough to happen. And then on top of that, find someone or two people that you can partner with to pray for this breakthrough. Because Jesus said in Matthew 18, "For where there are 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am among them." And he's moving. He's moving. That doesn't mean he's not with us in powerful ways when we're individually, but when I think about a heavy table, and I'm lifting a heavy table, I could probably, if it's the right weight, I could lift it on my own. But if I've got a second person or a third person to help me lift the table, man, it's a lot easier. It's a lot less load to carry, right? So when you're praying for breakthrough, when you're praying, whether it be the personal breakthrough or it be the church breakthrough, when you're praying, pray. Find somebody to pray with. Because also, in finding someone to pray with, encourage them as well in their breakthroughs, and encourage them in their battles and their frustrations and their failures. Find people who are going to encourage you as well. Don't just find 2 random people on the street. Find people who are going to encourage you when things are hard. When you don't feel like you're going to see breakthrough, when you feel like giving up on that, find somebody and some people that are going to help you lift that burden and encourage you. The other note card, we're going to lay down at the foot of the cross as an outward action, saying that not only are we going to be praying over this, but we're also not going to lean on our own understanding of the situation, but we're putting trust in our King. So as a staff, I'm not going to lie to you, we're not just going to pick these up and throw them away. As a staff, we're going to be praying over these as well. So on your second note card, if you want to, like I said, I always prefer people to be as blunt as you want on things. But if you feel like it's a little too personal, that's okay. You can hold back a little bit. But know that we're going to read through them, we're going to pray through them. Your name doesn't have to go on it. And I'll tell you this, I'm not like a guy who knows this is so-and-so's handwriting, right? I'll have no clue whose it is. But laying it at the foot of the cross, the goal is, one, that we're going to lean on his understanding and not our own. And that also we're going to have people behind the scenes that you won't even know the times that you're being prayed for. But please know this, you are being prayed for. Our staff, as we meet throughout the year, we're going to pull these note cards back out and we're going to pray over them. We're going to look over them and we're going to pray through each situation. And if you happen to get a breakthrough, we would love to hear it, right? If it's July and you're like, man, whoo, Jesus moved in a mighty way and I've got to tell somebody, we'd love to know, right? Because then that encourages us, that encourages others. So when you see a breakthrough in your life, when you see a breakthrough, tell us, tell people, encourage others, because you've gone from a failure, a battle, or a frustration. Now you're seeing victory in that situation. Tell people. And I don't